Is astrology real? If we're going to talk about how astrology can save the world, we're going to have to tackle the question of whether astrology is valid, whether there's scientific evidence of it, and whether it's real. Is this a real phenomenon that we are under before?
This framework is not fixed, solid. This framework could be also
Exactly.
mutable. It could be also be cardinal. This
Exactly.
framework is transitional.
If you disbelieve in astrology, I'm gonna call you a colonizer. Nigga, you could fly, astral project, doing all this different type of shit, but you wanna talk about motherfucking relaxing, nigga?
You need things explained to you, a paper or the data to be proven. You can like a little bit mentally retarded because the first book is life.
Truspace. Alright, cool. What's good, y'all? My name is Open Book. This is my partner.
Hey guys, this is Harith and welcome back to Truspace.
Exactly. And this video is about how astrology can and will save the world. And those aren't words that need to be taken lightly. Those are words that need to be taken very, very, very seriously. And even if you're skeptic now, time will prove. Forward and into the past. And one of the most things that I started realizing that I need to start saying to niggas, especially to white people, but it could work with niggas too and different type of people. If you disbelieve in astrology, I'm gonna call you a colonizer. Straight up. That's it. You a racist colonizer if you say astrology is not real. Because before white people went and came and landed, what type of systems did everybody operate under? And astrological. They all had cosmology. They all had an origin story, a mythology that was tied to the stars and the planet until the modern day way of thinking came out and they got rid of that shit so that they could better rule niggas. So if you're saying that skepticism, you're saying it's not real, where does that come from? Does that come from, you actually knowing or having evidence that you can prove that it's not real? No. Does it come from? It comes from the colonizers. So you colonizing piece of shit. Stop saying that shit. Or come intellectually and show the evidence of where shit can lag. Just like how we about to come right now with evidence of how that can come about. And I don't want to blame anybody, but that's what it is. Like if you went to school, you're a racist colonizer. Like there's no way to go around it. If you want to come telling me about black history from the perspective of what you learned in school, you're a racist colonizer, whether you're black or not. You want to tell me I was a monkey swinging on trees, nigga? Like, you really think that's the truth of the matter? But who told you that? I don't blame you for saying that. I don't blame you for thinking these things. We were all taught these things. And that's one thing. And that's kind of why I want to get real scientific with this and talk about Western scientific tradition, because like we all went through school. Like we all went through this where whether we like it or not, our minds are shaped by this Western scientific tradition. Whether you like it or not, from the West, this is how our minds have been conditioned. So if we don't understand the condition that was put up on our minds, how are we ever going to liberate ourselves? And it's not to say that everything that we would learn, that we were taught, was falsified and we have to throw it into the garbage. We just need clearer, more open perspectives to hop outside of the box so we can see everything holistically. You can't lie to someone that you want to work for you or that you want to provide you some value entirely. You can't do that. The best lies are 99% truth. And that's something that we really need to start to internalize, where everything is where certain omissions are the best types of lies, where you tell the truth but I left out a single part, or you lied about a particular aspect of it, but we would know and people wouldn't get along with the program if it was 100% truth. And that's just how it is.
This is why we have things like white lie or black lie. Just like we really like play with words.
I'm telling you, yo, it's crazy. So let's get into that. Is astrology real? If we're gonna talk about how astrology can save the world, we're gonna have to tackle the question of whether astrology is valid, whether there's scientific evidence of it, and whether it's real. Is this a real phenomenon that we are under before we start talking about how we can structure our world and our minds and our lives based off of these things to have greater clarity, to be whole beings living within this earth? We have to handle the question, um, is astrology real? So to answer that question, I want to go like what I said. Our minds are shaped by Western scientific tradition. So I want to walk us from where we got stuck in our education, where everything is now, and how everything is not separated like how we want to separate things, as if modern day physics and how we view the world doesn't align with the ancient philosophy and cosmology of astrology. It is completely unified. And then once you understand this, you can stop arguing. And this is why we're the true space. And this is why that name is so powerful. Because in the fucking true space, ain't nobody's wrong. No one's wrong in the true space. You just playing out a specific archetype. You think Kanye was wrong for saying any of the things that he said? Well, factually, sometimes. But he was always being a Gemini. So where did he lie? Where was the lie? Where he was just acting out the truths of the world that we live in. But you just don't agree with the perspective or don't have an open perspective to see it.
And this is where we show you things like where the theory of relativity actually worked, where in that case it was relative to him, it did exist, it does make sense, but relative to you it does not make sense.
And those are legitimate claims within the framework of science. So let's get into it. So when we talk about the modern worldview, and if physics support astrology, like what I said, we have to look into Western tradition and see how we learn to think, and our self definitions are based off of the same scientific models physicists use to describe the physical universe that we are up under. So time and our knowledge always progresses, and with it, new phenomena are discovered that can't be explained by the previous theories of reality. And that's one thing that people need to understand, where they be dying on the cross for certain ideologies, certain ways of thinking. But when you look back on time and history, it was always something was considered concrete. And then new discoveries, new phenomena came and knocked it down. So we need to stop basing how we look at the world on concreteness. That doesn't work. And that's not the world that we live in. The world is going to always constantly surprise you with those aspects. So starting off talking about with Newtonian physics made us insist, and Newtonian physics what came from the 17th, between 17th 18th century. So we're talking about a mentality from like 400 years ago that we still are up under and trapped by within our daily lives, not in science, not what the shadow government is running or what's actually known within the scientific world, but us in our daily lives and how we view and perceive ourselves. We are still stuck in Newtonian physics. So Newtonian physics made us insist on seeing ourselves as solid objects in a universe composed of fundamental building blocks, atoms basically, with protons, neutrons, and electrons being viewed as solid. Those were viewed as solid aspects of the atom that are building up the solid reality or the solid universe that we lived in. And it does describe the motions of the planets, mechanical machines, fluids in constant motion. So the theory is the basis of the mechanical world that we live in today and describes the universe as mechanical. So it's not like when I talk about these things, I'm not like throwing these things out, throwing all of these ideas out. It's more so of an integration that I am proposing, where you're not going to build a plane without Newtonian physics. You're not going to build a car without Newtonian physics. You're not going to be able to tell how long it's going to take you to fly from Toronto to Africa without Newtonian physics. So they account for certain aspects of our experiences, but they are not holistic. Not holistic. This allows us, yeah. So the problem lies in believing Newtonian mechanics being the ultimate theory of natural phenomena, claiming the ideas of absolute time and space. But something now commonplace like radio waves, transmitting music, information. So radio waves containing information that can be transmitted to a device, which is something that is physical, which is an energy to matter interaction, wasn't known when Newtonian physics was being developed. So there was phenomenon that they weren't looking at, which complete when you talk about radio waves traveling through mediums and stuff like that, looking at the world as solid objects, um, and everything being objective kind of starts to fall apart, and you'll start to understand why as we talk about it. Um, Nor did anyone assume that the experimenter themselves can affect the results of an experiment through thoughts and feelings alone, which we now know through quantum physics. So, with this Newtonian understanding and everything being objective, and then say we're holding up, or maybe even just daily experiences of and daily experiments of us trying to verify certain things in life, we don't account that by us having specific thoughts and feelings that we can alter the decision. So a lot of people would be projecting their own thoughts and feelings upon things, not realizing how that can alter the outcome in ways that they don't want at all. If you look at medicine and shit like that, they always have a control group. They always have a placebo group. Always, always a placebo group. But then they want to go and tell you that, oh, spirituality isn't real, and all of this other nonsense, when they, or that the mind and body is, kind of like slave to certain processes, or that it doesn't have the effect, but yet
Mm,
they have to create a placebo control group
mm.
so that they could take out the person's own influence out of it, so that they can know for sure if something is accounting for it. Because if you give someone a medicine that gets rid of headaches and you give them a sugar pill, both niggas don't have headaches anymore. So we can see how the frame of this Newtonian physics isn't necessarily gonna hold up in every circumstance.
Mm.
So it describes a very definite and objective world that can be very comfortable. Like, don't most people want to live in a world where things are definite, where things are for sure? This is going to lead to this, and that is unchanging.
I 100% see what they did there because it creates comfort and it makes things not, it prevents people from thinking too much and makes it easier to build a civilization too.
Exactly. It's easy to build a civilization based off of those matics, and then look at the Industrial Revolution. Look what it produced. It did that. But if we wanted to keep on going further, like on the average person and our average understanding, we would have been a little bit too more philosophical, or questioning higher things, or coming up with newer technologies that didn't fit a standard, or you can't get everybody on the same wavelength in terms of building cars. This is how a car is supposed to be built on a standard way. Um, that's how everything was supposed to be built, standard time. We all wouldn't be able to follow the same mechanics of
Oh,
time if we weren't on a standardized frame of reference.
this is what makes things, makes making, when we start things objective, it prevents people from being able to do things subjective, like what Caesar was trying to say, because everything is relative, so it's better for everybody to do it from their own point of view and then create an overall objective reality that we agree on based on all our own subjectivity.
Exactly, exactly. It's discounting that whole subjective reality, which is an aspect of reality that we need to include if we're ever going to look at the world and our human experience holistically.
This is kind of funny too, because when you look at science, before science we had religion, so things started way more subjective, then they became objective, where like Western science tradition, and you can see how things with the quantum physics and what Caesar speak about, things are moving to the subjectivism itself.
Exactly. It was like a wave. And then even in religion, how the conception of religion was mostly subjective. Like first Christians weren't talking about when Jesus was born. Like that was never a conversation. You won't find that anywhere. They were more concerned of Jesus returning and different ideals, forgiving niggas and helping out the poor and shit like that. That was their focus. But then later on, it started being like, when was Jesus born? No, it was this date. And then what did Jesus do in his die? What toilet paper did Jesus use to wipe his ass? What? It was all into the objective shit, and into getting into specifics, getting into the exoteric instead of the esoteric. When all religions started based off of esotericism, what was hidden behind the scenes, what was lesser known or lesser seen, the more which was the fundamental aspects of reality. But then as things got distorted, we started getting way too objective, and that's when Christianity started to fall. When all religions started to fall, really.
100%. But like, uh, but you can't understand objectivity without subjectivity, because objectivity is created with subjectivity.
Exactly. And then we'll explain the scientific framework that describes that stuff. So in the early 19th century, new phenomena were discovered that Newtonian physics could not describe. Electromagnetism being one, which is the basis for the causal effect that I'm about to show y'all for astrology. So, Michael Faraday, you ever hear of the Faraday cage?
No.
The Faraday cage was like an insulating cage built off of material that didn't allow energy to come through. It's like an insulator, like say like rubber, like how it doesn't allow electricity to pass through. They will put plants in there, and when they were cut off from everything, the plants would die. When they were put in an individual place, and pretty quickly too. So that's Michael Faraday and James Clerk Maxwell. I was gonna call them Jesuit priests, but they weren't official Jesuit priests, but shadow government priests found it more appropriate to use a field concept and say that each charge creates a condition or disturbance in the space around it, and when another charge comes into contact with that space, it feels a force. So we're kind of moving away. So, and this is how they're describing atoms and how atoms interact, the building blocks of our reality. With the Newtonian physics, within their paradigm, electrons, protons, neutrons are solid. But they're starting to discover it's actually more correct to say that the atoms are creating a charge. A field is emanating from this atom, a non-physical field that interacts with other fields, and that this is what builds the relationship between particles. So now we have a concept of a field interacting with other fields that build our universe. Now there's a scientific framework even now for how we can begin to explain how we can affect others from a distance because of this field concepts on a particle level, and you're made out of atoms and particles, so you have a field. Multiple, if you want to look at it like that. Then in 1905, Einstein's theory of relativity shattered all the principles of Newtonian physics as a worldview by proving that time is relative. Space and time are intimately connected, therefore, there is no universal flow of time, meaning time is not linear, nor is it absolute. Time is relative. Two observers will order events differently in time if they move at different velocities relative to the observed events. So there is a framework based off of how you observe an effect. Two people can experience it based off of different times. And then we all know Einstein had proved these things and had experimental proof of these ideas. And even though we know that, our understanding of reality hasn't caught up to those types of understanding. So now we have time and space are just merely elements, not holistically, but elements to describe phenomena and not completely encapsulated. Time and space are so fundamental to our worldview that changes everything about how we view nature and how we view ourselves. We haven't yet integrated this into our personal lives. So to get this on a personal level example, if we get a psychic flash that is that isn't immediately confirmed, or I get a vision of my friend tripping down the stairs, and then you go and call up the nigga and be like, "Yo, my nigga, did you trip down the stairs?" Be like, "No, you stupid ass nigga. I'm not even by stairs. You know, I'm outside. Like nigga, what did you talking about?" Be like, "All right, my nigga, goodbye." Wow, I must be tripping. I must be confused and not validate that. But based off of what we know now of that time being relative, that was Newtonian thinking before. If we didn't get confirmation to validate that insight immediately, that's Newtonian thinking. We can't use Newtonian mechanics to explain every phenomena. So, in other words, what we experienced was real. It was real. Since time isn't linear, it may have already occurred. It may be occurring at the time that we seen it, or it may be happening in the future, or it may even simply just be a potential that never got manifested. And if we account our own influence in it, you even calling the nigga, telling him that he might fall down a pair of stairs could have put us into a different space-time continuum, a different timeline where the nigga didn't fall down the stairs. That we have that much power to change the future, and that we are that tapped in, and that just because you got that insight and it wasn't immediately validated doesn't mean that that insight wasn't real, or that you shouldn't look into that, or that you should discount it.
And even if you attempt to over push it to the idea towards your friend, it might at some point exist in his reality. He may fall off the
Actually trip down the stairs now.
exactly.
It manifested it, make it real now.
Yeah, 100%. So 100%, I give you. See, this is like a deep thing most people won't get
100%.
because
Shoot.
I think it starts with how a lot of people do not connect these theories to their own experience and prefer to
Exactly.
look at it from the point of view, the mindset of someone else explaining in a paper. If you need things explained to you a paper or the data to be proven, you can like a little bit mentally retarded because the first book is life, what's in front of you. That's the first thing you need to like remember how people view things back then.
And that's the basis of the scientific method. If we couldn't experience it through experimental proof and mathematical proof, is the only way that they claim something is actual fact. So there has to be a real life component where we can experience the phenomenon, and a mathematical component where it can be explained through numbers and objectivity and all of that. But yet the average person doesn't integrate these things. And then the average spiritual person wants to say science is a lie, and separate yourself from everything when we're all just talking about the same shit. We really
Mhm.
all just talking about the same shit.
And if you look at back then, the best philosophers, the best scientists were astrologists, there were necromancer, there were scientists, there were kings, there were warriors. They didn't separate the roles. They were all of them together.
100%. If we look at the biggest empires, who ran them were always into spirituality. Not once the British Empire, they had a spiritual king. The Islamic ones, the everyone. When you look at India and the Hindus, the Chinese people, them, all of them. The leader was the one who was considered the most spiritual out of all of them. Just like Jesus. You know, Jesus was going around touching niggas and shit like that. Jesus touching the legs. I can walk. You was in a wheelchair your whole motherfucking life. Jesus came and touched you and shit like that. That's what the kings were doing, and that's where they got those references from. But it all ties to that connection to that spiritual tradition, and that's what actually ran the world, even to Hitler. Niggas don't even realize how spiritual this nigga Hitler was. But this nigga went and took over Tibet, for reasons. They used to say Tibet was like a spiritual center of the world, based off of like literal like meridians and magnetic poles that a lot of energy filtered into the mountain of Tibet, which created the culture that they had there. Hitler went and took that shit. He was like, yo, I want me some. I want me some. He was so into
Hitler
the occult.
Hitler was a Taurus, so like he understood like the deep values of things. Like he had like a high priestess energy, even though it looked like more like scientific, operated, but it was really backed up with some spirituality.
100%. 100%. Like he was
Even
deep into that shit.
even his Nazis ideas, you compare to like it's similar to like Israel type of ideas, like one ethnic group and like one idea and things like that. So it's the same thing.
The same thing. And just even on the topic of Hitler, I remember reading a book called The History of Central Banking, which is banned on Amazon, which I understand why after I read it, because it can be considered anti-Semitic. But you can't talk about banking without talking about the Jews. So it was kind of an unavoidable thing. But Hitler's economic policy and how he looked at world economics, shit, I might have to agree with my nigga. You know, it's talking about, he was against debt or against loaning money and interest and all of that. But that's a whole nother video. That's a whole nother video.
Mhm.
But just to show you about that connection, how the previous power people used to always have that integration where they didn't separate things like that. So time and space, yeah, are so fundamental. That psychic flash. So um, even the experience of us feeling time sped up or slowed down,
Mhm.
those aren't illusions. Those are real, genuine experiences that lie outside of the Newtonian framework of explaining natural phenomena. And you will have to look at the theory of relativity for the framework to explain that. So you having fun with your friends and 10 minutes, you thought 10 minutes went by, it was actually an hour and shit like that. That was a real, genuine experience. 10 minutes really did go by, if you get what I mean. Or an hour, that discrepancy. Or you're at work and you're working for fucking 8 hours. You worked the whole motherfucking shift and only 20 minutes went by. That's real. That's a real, genuine experience based
Mhm.
off of your relative experience to time, where it's
Mhm.
not based off of universally. But to get your ass to work and shit like that, to have a cutoff time and to make deliveries and all of
Mhm.
that shit, you have to use Newtonian physics. But that doesn't encapsulate all of reality. And it's not holistic view of way of seeing everything.
100%. Like people at work, they all have different attitude about work. The person is angry, some person accepting about it, some person is laughing, talking about it. All of them are putting themselves in different state to deal with what they're experiencing, and that like that's the theory of relativity itself. And they create
Literally.
different time, create different illusions. They're like one guy said time went so fast, the other guy is like time went so slow.
Which shows you how subjective personal experience is.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, and then there's even cultures. Native American culture, who did not have clocks for linear time, divided time into two aspects. They had the now, and they had all other time. And then the Australian Aborigines had the passing time and the great time. And then we even had scientists looking into clairvoyance, and then they described regular linear time and then clairvoyant time, where a clairvoyant, a psychic, can enter into a state of being where time is not linear and everything is more so all happening at once, all encapsulating, where maybe there's sequence to events, but it is not linear, if you get what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So it is completely depends on the observer. We shouldn't, and then now look at the concept of past lives. We are too ready to accept that past lives happen in linear time as well. What if past lives are all happening simultaneously at the same time, but in different time space continuums. See, that's an idea that a lot of us don't want to think of, even if we do believe in past lives. And if you want to go and look at past lives more objectively, and you can be like, oh, well, there's not this linear time thing that you can follow, but that is not the basis. You can't put time into that box. It could be expensive. They could all be happening simultaneously, and what's happening in a different timeline affecting us within this one. Within this one. So it's like, yo, niggas is really trying to solidify the world that we live in. But this is based off of Newtonian thinking and Newtonian mechanics, which we are still slaves by this point, when you can see, because there is scientific framework that expands us beyond those present ideas that can be explained within science, that have mathematical and experimental proof that you are experiencing within your own life. So we need to adopt a whole nother view of even things like past lives, and start to consider if they're all happening right now within this moment, within a different time space continuum. So Einstein, another important consequence of Einstein's relativity is that matter and energy are interchangeable. What did he call it? E equals mc squared. He proved that matter and energy are the same bumba clot thing. It's the same thing. So mass is nothing but condensed and crystallized form of energy. Matter is simply slowed down energy. So with that understanding, I was just talking about E equals mc squared, how another consequence of Einstein's theory of relativity shows that energy and matter are interchangeable. That's basically what I was saying. So when that, and you look at yourself and understand that you're made out of matter, and then it gives Dolo talking about light bending on itself a whole new different perspective, where see that's ghetto talk, where or that's real inner wisdom of looking at how the world is perceived. But then if even if you were to go and look into science and try and find, there is validation for it, because we are all made out of energy, or we are all matter, which is made out of energy, electrons moving around, interacting, creating fields of force that create the reality that we live in. And if you understand that we are made out of energy, not only is 99, this is something that Joe Dispenza has in his book Becoming Supernatural, which he gives a reference of like what an atom would look like. And it's like a car is like the proton and neutron in a football field. I think it was several football fields. Was the field of space that an electron can exist in, and it moves around, or it can exist in anywhere within that field. But the neutron and proton are in the center. So that means that the building block of life, 99% of it is empty, is space. 99% of it is space. So when Dolo says you are no thing, you see how, like, there's ghetto knowledge, in terms of how he can explain it, but it has framework within how we view the lives, and that's how you can tell if something's true. If within multiple different paradigms, multiple different perspectives, does it hold up? Then that's when you know you're in the true space. That's when you know we're there. So if an atom is 99% space, where electrons have the potential of existing, and the building block of electrons are photons, which come from the fucking sun, and our light is light, means that the sun creates all matter, and that we are light beings. So when you hear spiritualists say that we are light beings, there is scientific framework. But you want to be a light being, saying science is not real. I'm gonna go and float, beloved light, la 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 la, and separating yourself from everything, talking about universal unity, but you want to go and separate yourself from everything, from scientific description, when you're not understanding that unity means unity, and you couldn't separate yourself even if you wanted to, and it shows you the importance of the sun. The sun created everything. So when astrologers say the sun's talking about creative manifestation, it's not some hokey pokey assignment that we're just putting onto the sun. It is real physical fact that the sun created everything. So when you see old civilizations and traditions worshiping the sun, oh, look at these dumbass niggas worshiping the sun. So primitive. So primitive. Like, yo, that's based off of real reality, and the science that your bum ass is paying for is proving it. But yet you think that is primitive. So who's the real primitive person within that situation? Who's the one that really doesn't have actual understanding of the realm of reality that we are living in?
And a lot of times, even though people make fun of these people ideas, they anchor their ideas on things that are concrete and reality that you see in your everyday life. Compared to now, people are basing the whole life based on made up people ideas, LGBT communities, veganism, something made up like a fart cloud that is unseen, that doesn't even exist in reality. Is someone's whole life.
Literally, literally. And we'll get into that afterwards too, how astrology can get all of that shit. Because if we have structural framework of reality that is holistic, a strict framework of nature that is holistic, we wouldn't even fall into those pit holes. Oh, I'm a man inside, or woman inside, and all of that different type of stuff. When you understand that the world's made of masculine and feminine energy, it's like, yeah, nigga, you are. Like, yeah. But we have a more sensible framework that we can put that in.
Because this framework is not fixed, solid. This framework could be also mutable. It could also be cardinal. This framework is transitional.
Exactly.
That's why we can't even put a word to it, or they attempt to put the words to it with things like horoscope, like some weak words like that. Like back then they had like stronger words, like Muslims they would call it al Kitab, the mother of all books, or like some shit like that.
Or the Egyptians, they never talked about zodiac signs. What did they have? Netters. They had netters and archetypes. The Greeks had the pantheon of gods. The everybody else, what was niggas doing in America? Talking about turtles and shit like that. But we was all talking about the same thing, which goes and shows you. And then we have the Buddhist niggas talking about. I'm gonna go into that after, but fucking 108, that spiritual number. What's 12 zodiac signs multiplied by 9 motherfucking planets? That's 108 right there. That's 108. So I want and then how much elements is on the periodic table? 108. So when we trying to separate everything, we are preventing ourselves from having a holistic experience on Earth. So this is what I'm trying to show niggas, but I'll go deeper into that later on. But yeah, the sun created all matter. So changes in the sun, say the sun goes into different positions and interacts with Earth in different ways, and all matter comes from the sun. So all matter comes from the sun. Just remember that, and then it fits within our scientific framework of reality. In 1964, physicist J.S. Bell, physicist/priestess J.S. Bell, published a mathematical proof called Bell's theorem. You probably heard Bell's theorem mentioned somewhere.
Yeah.
But which supports the concept that subatomic particles are connected in some way that transcends space and time, so that anything that happens to one particle affects other particles. This effect is immediate and does not need time to be transmitted. Einstein's theory states that it is impossible for a particle to travel faster than the speed of light. And Bell's theorem shows effects can be superluminal or faster than the speed of light, instantaneous. Now, this theory has been supported by experiments, which I'll talk about. But this is a phenomenon that stands outside of Einstein's relative theory of reality. So Einstein's theory brought us to a more closer to a holistic experience of reality. But as time went on, and they started to understand things more, even that didn't fit the framework. They found new phenomenon as they went deeper with the magnifying glass, looking at what reality is. They found that Einstein's theory didn't even stand up. So, long story short, science is slow as hell. Long story short, these niggas is slow as hell, and niggas 3,000 years ago devising talking about astrology, maybe they had cloth around their dick and shit like that, and just walking around naked and shit like that, but they had a more of a holistic view of reality. And then, yeah, they walk around with cloth and they dicks out and not wearing any clothes because they getting hit by the sunlight, the matter forming particle, but they also activating vitamin D, which is creating thousands of biological functions in their body that is creating better immune system. You're giving them energy, ATP. All of the sun even folds protein. Without the sun, proteins wouldn't fold to get their magnetic functionalities to be able to be sent to specific parts of the body. The sun is even responsible for blood flow. Scientists would even tell you to go outside and get sunlight, and it'll increase blood flow because it'll make your blood thinner and help everything flow. So when astrologers tell you that the sun rules the blood, it ain't no hokey pokey shit. I'm trying to tell y'all.
If you even if you do your research, you will see that they said your blood has a very small amount of gold. And what does Leo rules? Gold. And what is it? What does the sun deal with gold?
So I'm trying to tell niggas. So you just separating things, but without actually having the knowledge or even the will and desire to go and investigate it. To not insult you, the best I could call you is ignorant. That's the best description that I can call, because you're not coming with any actual evidence. Niggas, I whenever people talk about astrology and skepticism, they're like, I don't believe that shit. Nobody gave a fuck what you believe, nigga. Nobody cares about your belief.
Yeah,
you keep that to yourself.
Yeah, because you're trying to attempt to tell about your subjective reality, opinion on objective reality that you're not even aware of. So you don't even count.
That's what.
This is why people hang people back then. This is why people got killed. And now we judge them. Look at them. No, they were evil. Nah, trust me. It was business.
It was all business, right then and there. So yeah, and then the experiments that prove supraluminal connectedness, what they fucking call it, the Hadron Collider, up in Switzerland and shit like that. It's even in Switzerland, like up there in the north. There's certain places, especially where there's all snow and it's all white and shit like that. The solar activity is crazy. I've heard of clairvoyants talk about that the most energy spot that they've seen has been in the Swiss Alps and within those areas. And then when they're going to do all of these subatomic tests, where do they go? To the Swiss Alps, which is interesting. I find that very interesting. But this Hadron Collider, what does it do? It spins subatomic particles together, unifying them.
If you go there with your mind will spin like a Hadron Collider.
Dead ass. And then you'll realize that Jesus was beside you the whole time. He's like, yo, what's up, my nigga? And he daps you up. Like real shit. So you spin two particles together, and then you separate them. You can affect this particle over here, and it'll move to this particle. That's the experimental proof that proves Bell's theorem, the mathematical equations that prove that is possible, that things can happen simultaneously. So it happens. So if all matter is derived from the motherfucking sun, a spinning ball of motherfucking hydrogen, spinning ball of energy, and all matter descends from there, if I'm telling it, we have scientific proof and framework that shows that you can affect matter at a distance when they have been linked, and you come from this celestial body, and I tell you that changes in the sun. And you see all around you with the seasons changing and all of this shit happening, but you think that it doesn't affect you when you came from the sun. And we have scientific framework to prove that it doesn't. So this is the causal relationship that I have been proposing. So if changes in the sun can affect, the particles that have spun with it, then you damn, and then you're made up. Your very essence is made up of these things. You cannot escape your connection to the sun, even to a psychological perspective, because we know that the body and the mind are not separate.
You could even like you guys could try this experiment where you try to go against the sun by basically staying awake at night and sleeping in the morning time. And by doing that, you're gonna fuck up your own circadian rhythm, and you can see how bad you feel. Just that alone, that tells you there's two things that are not matching. And there's some
Literally,
reason everybody's waking up at the same time. The animals, it's not like just we're retarded and decide to look at the sun. For some reason, we're all pointing in the same direction.
to a point, to a T, where I remember when I was tree planting, a shorty told me that men have a spike of adrenaline at 6 a.m. in the morning that women don't. And then to a non-astrologer, that means nothing. But to an astrologer, I'm like, you mean Aries where the sun is exalted, and then the sun rules the adrenals? And you're telling me that we get an adrenal boost at 6 a.m. where the sun is exalted? That blows my mind, and it shows you the
And
connectedness that we
and,
have.
and not only the simple fact that if Aries deals with us waking up, what becomes before Aries? Pisces, us sleeping, the dream realm.
And then and
You
not only right before we wake up, they say that 4 a.m. to 4 a.m. to or like 3 a.m. to like certain times is when we have the most melatonin, which is the neurotransmitter of nighttime, which is the mystical experience neurotransmitter and then if you were to wake up and meditate at those times, that's when you have the most transcendental experiences. That's when you have your imagination's tapped in, spirituality's tapped in, you feel connected to everything, you're able to get into those higher. That's Pisces time. That's Pisces. And what is Pisces talking about but those things?
100%.
So it's down to our physical bodies that we are experiencing these things. Look how far they had to take us from the reality of us experiencing our lives for us to not know this stuff, man. Look at how far we had to have come.
Like they took us so far from reality, which is in front of you, and then they made up a concept for you to look at. The fact that people even trust out their own experience and tell me their own experience is not valid, it is itself retarded, and them telling themselves God does not exist by agreeing with another person, spaceship or point of view or something like that.
Yo, it's crazy. It's crazy to the point this combobulation is so real. I remember talking to people and this I remember talking to people and they'd be like, how they talk shit about Christianity and all this different trash, but they still believe Jesus was real. Like I'm like, how how does that make sense? You want to talk shit about Christianity and all of this different type of shit, but you believe a virgin gave birth? Like I can't
Yeah,
talk to niggas like that. But then if
yeah.
Jesus didn't exist, you have to discount the whole chronology. You have to discount of the calendar. You have to discount so much things that was based off of that knowledge. But you're like, no, the government would lie. Well, no, this is the structure of reality. And if I abandon that concept, so Jesus has to have been real for a lot of people, even though they aren't Christian themselves and don't believe in the faith. Blows my mind. Just so that they can validate the lies or the worldview that they have that they're comfortable with. Not that that's real, that they're comfortable with.
And
But
you gotta get and he gotta give kudos to religion, but to give by giving him that mental crutch which make him feel comfortable and an idea that he can't let go of it instead of insulting it. The same bed you lay on, they made it for you. Like I hate
literally.
these, like these are the worst people.
Literally. Like I don't understand. And then we keep on dissing Christianity. Like get off of Christianity's dick, bro. Like the you mean the religion of forgiveness? Like Christianity is about fucking feeding the poor and shit like that, and like that's all Jesus did. Like niggas want to talk shit about Jesus and all of that. He didn't do anything. Maybe later on the church and certain people didn't live up to the doctrines, didn't live up to the faith, and distorted it. Okay, you can make that argument, but you can't say that Christianity is not a religion of forgiveness. That's not a religion of, you know, being nice and kind to people. Jesus never told you to kill anybody. So when some niggas say kill this nigga for Jesus, that's that nigga's interpretation. Jesus specifically told you not to do that motherfucking shit. So and then we're not even talking about real people. We're talking about ideas and concepts. So you can understand Jesus represents the sun, and we'll kind of get into that later. And then even the circadian rhythm. You think that the sun doesn't affect you when it wakes your ass up in the morning? Like what?
Like you telling me that
What?
you don't feel better by waking up in the same time everybody wakes up on, and you just feel this natural rhythm of life because you're moving together. But you tell me, nah, I don't feel like it. I want to wake up on my own time. You want to be your own Lucifer. You want to come up with your own church.
Literally. And then your whole biological chemistry with the serotonin is triggered by the sunlight. So it's controlling your serotonin, which is mental alertness. So you're telling me you wouldn't even have conscious perception without the sun?
If you said that, you're a heretic. You get crucified. You get killed.
Throw me
Like,
on the cross. Throw a nigga on the cross. Literally. And without the darkness, well, the melanin wouldn't, the melatonin wouldn't come in and put you into those, make you relax, put you into your autonomic nervous system where your body starts to repair, you start to digest. All of that happens is triggered by the sun going away. But you want to tell me that the zodiacs aren't real and what time of the year you were born doesn't matter, but on a daily basis the sun is controlling everything, even your mental and psychological function? Like I don't
and,
understand.
and if you really think about all the people wake up on time, wake up early, all these people get ahead. What does Aries rule deal with? The head.
Get it? Oh shit, man. Yo, literally.
You
Literally.
you just going against life. You just wicked man. It makes no sense. That's it.
Literally. And then we're talking about serotonin too. Serotonin is going to the brain for that mental alertness. The sun's exalted and then it's connected to your adrenals, right? And then it going to your head, Aries. Your gut. 50% of your serotonin is produced and kept in your gut. What rules the gut? Your solar fucking plexus, which is representing the sun. So when we're talking about these systems and how it connects to the body, how it connects to your psychology, we ain't lying, yo. We ain't lying.
I even heard like certain Egyptian, they would do rituals. They would put people in coffins for like 30 days, and then they would take them a point high in the mountain, and then show them and open the coffin, show them the sun. Like people use like regular things, and just came up with rituals. But is this they took waking up to the next level, and that's it.
A lie. That's what you do to a nigga who said Jesus ain't real. You like lock his ass into a coffin, wait 30 days, open it up, and you see the sun, and then there's no denying that God is real.
This is where you get stuff like what called sun gazing from and stuff like that.
That's intense. That's intense. So just for further proof to show you, and that so we showed you the framework of the scientific framework based off of physics on how modern day, and then a lot of these are concepts that we already kind of knew about or that we heard about but haven't integrated into our personal lives, and or at least contemplated how this can play out within our personal reality. We left it separate for scientists to develop quantum computers and AI systems to run our bitch ass, to do all of that type of shit, but not to integrate that knowledge within ourselves. But then we want to claim that we're all knowing all of this different type of shit. It's crazy.
Like they showed it to us as theories, and we still think about them as theories, but they actually utilize them.
In real world, in the real world, in real life, it's like a fraternity. People don't realize how political science is, and all of these theories and experiments are funded. I remember seeing a video of Andrew Huberman. You know that nigga, that big buff nigga.
Yeah.
What's talking about? I hate niggas
funded.
like that. I like him. I like
Yeah.
him, but I hate niggas like that. Um, in terms of how because they want to talk about, oh, let's talk about breathing and the science of breathing. Let's talk about meditation and the science of meditation. Like, shut your bitch ass up. You want to meditate so you can relax? Like, what, nigga? You can meditate, transcend into different realities, nigga. You can fly, astral project, and doing all this different type of shit. But you want to talk about motherfucking relaxing, nigga? Get the fuck out of here. You want to talk about relaxing so you can wake up the next day to go back to work. That's all his research into meditation is to make your ass calmer so your ass can go back to work in the morning. That's it. And that's all that these scientists do. But Andrew Huberman, he was defending the scientists that were with Epstein. And it was saying, you guys don't understand what it's like. You need funding to do experiments. So sometimes you have to rub elbows with these evil niggas so you can get the funding and all of that. I don't give a fuck what you are researching, my nigga. If Jeffrey Epstein is fondling little kids and he is allowing influence into the scientific world based off of the money he had, there needs to be a whole new reconstruction of the scientific world if niggas like that is the ones who are funding the research. And if they're funding the research, what do you think he's interested in? Huh? You think he's interested in the things that are going to liberate society? The nigga blackmailing politicians by having them sleep with little children on his separate island that's 9 miles away from Joe Biden's family residence. Get your bitch ass out of here. Trying to talk about that shit. You think what's that nigga's name? Andrew Cuomo? Not Andrew Cuomo, his brother, the other nigga. Chris Cuomo, one of them's a CNN news anchor, and then one's a CNN news anchor, and the other one's a governor. And then the news anchors be like, oh, don't worry about that guy. Like, yo, how's that not a conflict of interest? And then they all live in New York. You're telling me the governor of New York had no idea that this nigga was bringing submarines, had a private island with little kids and all of that? Who commissioned all of that? Like, bro. And these are the niggas that you want to go and follow telling me that I'm pseudo because they didn't give me validation. Come on, y'all. But just to even further show it, I may not play the whole thing, but just to even further show you guys of the statistical proof that goes into astrology. And this will blow you guys' mind away. We already showed you the framework. So now let's take a look into actual astrology and see how it plays out. Can you hear this shit? Let me know if you can hear the video.
Astrology is the idea that each planet in our solar system has a unique energetic field
It's not that
that
loud.
is strong enough and powerful enough to affect life on Earth and throughout the solar system. It's the concept that there are unseen influences in space which affect us, much like invisible environmental influences on Earth affect us. The planets are said to create new, different kinds of energy as they move into different positions or aspects through their orbits in our solar system. And astrology also puts forth the idea that around our planet are these certain zones or sectors of space called signs of the zodiac. And that these 12 areas of space also carry their own unique energetic blueprint that affects life on Earth somehow.
One thing I love about this nigga too, he said certain zones around Earth that we call the zodiac. You see how this nigga's tapped in because he didn't talk about the constellations, because that's not what niggas is talking about with tropical astrology. So when people are trying to disprove certain things with tropical astrology, we're talking about the sun's relation to us on Earth and specific zones, spaces that these constellations happen to fall in, and that's where those zones got their names from. So when people trying to also along the lines of the skepticism around astrology, I'm going to talk about, oh, the constellations move 22 degrees. You don't even know what you're talking about. You don't even know the science that you're trying to disprove. What a fool you are.
All of these factors are said to combine to impact human beings at the time of their birth in ways that are carried with them for the rest of their life. This is sort of like saying that the season a person is born in could affect their personality, and indeed there have been countless studies published in major peer-reviewed and highly respected journals that have shown that the season someone is born in does affect their mind in very deep ways for the rest of their life. There was a recent study coming out of Budapest which analyzed over 400 people, found there was a direct link between their personality and the season they were born in. People born in summer were more likely to be optimistic and prone to mood swings. People born in winter were shown to be less angry than others, and people born in August were the least depressed. Now, of course, this is due to environmental influences on Earth, not the planets in our solar system. But the question becomes, what about the season of the solar system? What about when the Sun is in Virgo and Mars is in Leo and Jupiter is in Gemini? Could that affect us somehow? Could different seasons of our cosmic calendar somehow affect the people on Earth, similar to the seasons on Earth affecting us? So that's the idea of astrology. The very first scientist to ever produce rigorous scientific research on astrology was Carl Gustav Jung. Jung was, of course, one of the great pioneers of the entire field of psychology. He was one of the founders of psychology back almost well over 100 years ago. He gave us common terms like introversion, extroversion, synchronicity, archetypes, and many others. He founded the tradition of analytical psychology that's sometimes called depth psychology, through which many people have become licensed psychotherapists worldwide. Jung studied all things mystical and occult. He was famous for that. But he was famous for doing so in purely a scientific manner. He was skeptical that these concepts could literally be true, and instead he was more interested in this symbolic relationship that they held with the human psyche. What does it mean subconsciously? What do these symbols mean subconsciously? What does astrology mean subconsciously? What does alchemy mean in regards to the human psyche? But he was an ideal scientist in the sense that he was both skeptical and open-minded. And he wanted to look at everything and figure out what the truth was. And he had written about the signs of the zodiac and discussed how they represent archetypes that lay deep within the human subconscious mind. But at one point, he decided he actually wanted to study astrology. He wanted to see if there's any meat behind it, if astrology could, in fact, describe someone's personality and their relationships. So he contacted astrologers from 4 different countries, and he was able to get astrology readings from married couples that were made over a period of several years. And the couples obviously had no idea their charts would be used for this purpose. It was completely random. He ended up getting astrology charts for 483 married couples. So in total, there were 966 individual charts. And he conducted a statistical analysis of all of these charts, and to his surprise, he found that 936 out of the 966 charts had an extremely large proportion of the very same contacts between the Sun, the Moon, Venus, and Mars, which astrologers say indicate marriage and romantic relationships. And so he contacted his mathematician friend in Basel, who is none other than the famous quantum physics pioneer Marcus Fires. And when Professor Fires crunched the numbers, he calculated that the odds that this could have happened by chance were upwards of 10 million to 1. This was a 96.8% correlation between what astrologers say.
10 million to 1. And when he said this is the ideal scientist, 100%. So he was skeptical of something, and he actually set out to go and learn it based off of the guidelines that the people who claim that they're experts actually do this stuff, to go and research to see if there's actually any validity to it. This is how the real scientific mind thinks. You saying astrology is not real because a scientist that you know of or that you like the personality of disclaimed it, Neil deGrasse Tyson, or just doesn't know about it, does not mean that it's invalid. And a true scientific investigation would lead you to what Carl Jung did, and a 96.8% correlation. Now I can attest to this stuff. Me and my girlfriend, my baby mama, she has Venus in Sagittarius, 9 degrees. I have my moon in Sagittarius at 9 degrees, and then my moon is in my fifth house, the house of children, and then she my baby mama. And then Venus talking about fertility and relationships and all of that. So same results. Same
And what
results.
astrologers say indicates marriage, and what was in the charts of
So
these
that
married
was the
couples.
study with Gustav
Jung was
Jung.
obviously very shocked by this. He had gone into the experiment
Makes sense.
actually expecting to disprove astrology. And so he ended up
He
doing
did it
this
three
experiment
times.
3 times, using different methods each time just to make sure he didn't screw anything up. And each time he was able to come up with these amazing
Each
results.
time he got the same thing.
And the whole thing obviously radically changed his view on astrology, as at this point he really had no choice but to conclude that he'd found something here. Jung did publish this research, so if you want to read more about the details surrounding this study, you can pick up a copy of The Structure and Dynamics of the Psyche, available at your local bookstore or library, Amazon, whatever. But, you know, the interesting point here is that Jung was the first scientist who was not in some sort of occult Middle Ages secret society or something that we don't know about to do any sort of rigorous scientific study on
Now this is Michael Garculin talking about this nigga.
So now we come to the most famous scientific research ever done on astrology, which comes from a French scientist by the name of Michel Gauquelin. Gauquelin was a statistician and a psychologist who had an interest in astrology at a young age, but as he grew older and he went through his scientific training, he started to see it as absurd. He became very bitter towards astrologers who he was seeing as complete charlatans, but he was a smart guy, so he thought instead of just denying astrology, he would attempt to disprove it. So he set about studying what he felt was one of the most ridiculous claims of astrology, the idea of whether the planets can predict career path. Astrologers, of course,
Vocational
say that you
astrology.
can look at a person's birth chart and see where their ultimate career path lies. This is typically called vocational astrology, and you'll tend to see this effect most often in famous and successful people because usually they'll actualize their life path. So to test this idea, Michel Gauquelin studied the birth charts of over 20,000 famous people, and much to his surprise, he found that the birth charts accurately matched the career and personality of a very, very significant percentage of the people he was studying. And it was so significant that the possibility it could have happened by chance was 5 million to 1. There were many of the planetary positions that astrologers would say predict the given career path that were consistently showing up in the birth charts of the people who had chosen those professions. Athletes and military professionals had Mars conjunct their rising sign or their midheaven, just like astrologers say they would. Writers had the moon, actors and politicians had Jupiter, and scientists had Saturn. The results were shocking, and they radically changed Gauquelin's views, and although he was still skeptical of astrology by itself, he couldn't deny the results he was finding. So the Mars effect was further replicated by other scientists who produced the same results, and still to this day scientists are publishing research which validates it. The most recent study that
That's
was
fucking
published was
2012.
relatively recent, but soon after the
Fucking
Mars effect was
2012,
brought into
bro.
scientific discourse, the skeptic groups organized around it and they decided it was their duty to debunk it. So there's nothing wrong with that, of course. I mean, if the Mars effect is true, if he was actually finding this effect, then when they look at it themselves, they should find the same thing. So they decided to do their own studies just to see if they could come up with the same results. And Gauquelin, of course, was a skeptic, so he was actually excited about this. He welcomed their investigations. The first group to do this was a famous Belgian skeptic group called the Belgian Committee for the Critical Analysis of Parasciences. This group not only successfully replicated the Mars effect when they did their own studies, they got the same results as Gauquelin, but they were so embarrassed by their findings that they withheld them for 8 years.
8 years.
Then later on, the famous American skeptic group, PSYCOP, or the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, took a slightly different approach than their Belgian counterparts. They did their own study, and initially they announced they could not replicate Gauquelin's results. But that statement was soon disproven by psyop members themselves, and it erupted into the biggest scandal the organization has ever seen. A senior member of the Psyop Council was a man named Dennis Rollins, who not only left the organization after their debunking attempt, but he wrote a very detailed article in Fate magazine which exposed the cover-up. He wrote that they bungled their major investigation, they falsified the results, they covered up their errors, and they even fired a colleague of his who threatened to tell the truth. So this became
Just even think about what type of grimy, low down, dumbass, bum ass person you have to be to make a whole skeptic group. To make a group, to make a skeptic group. Like, what? You telling me? And like, are these niggas getting paid to do this shit? You telling me your livelihood is going to be towards disproving people's claim of like parapsychology and paranormal activity? Like, that's your life? To disprove people talking about that shit? You have nothing better to do? They're already grimy motherfuckers in the first place. You goddamn right they wouldn't falsify some evidence and shit like that. So yeah, he goes and talks about how they originally found the same findings as Gauquelin did, but they went and falsified it. And then a bunch of detailed articles came out exposing how they falsified the information. It's like, yo, what type of grimy motherfuckers?
Those they have the mind of kids.
Literally. And in multiple different journals. I think it was the Scientific Journal or the Social Psychology Journal and the Psychology Journal that detailed and have articles breaking down on how, and they called it the Zelen test. So if you ever find it or hear someone else trying to tell you that the Psychops experiment actually disproved, or that the Mars effect was disproven, they obviously haven't done the research to go and see on how it was shredded apart by multiple different organizations. And a member, part of that particular organization, went and exposed the group and how they threatened to fire people who were to come out with the information. So I'm probably not going to play the whole thing, but y'all get the idea. Y'all get the idea. It goes into introverts and extroverted people, talking about how Aries, masculine, Taurus, feminine, and how all of that coincides with introverted and extroverted people, how they would have those configurations. Talking about serial killers. We all know the mutable signs is the serial killers, but there's been real studies, 2006, y'all, by PhDs.
I heard Pisces are top serial killers, yo.
You top. And then you also have the 12th house principle. So certain alignments with the 12th house and Pluto. Oh. Are we talking about Harris? And we got a Virgo moon.
And Sagittarius ascendant.
And it's Sagittarius ascendant. Don't go on this nigga's bad side. But yeah, and then they done statistical, and then they find it to a point where they put, like, this is a PhD spending her time and money doing this shit, getting paid for this type of shit, and you're out here on your couch eating potato chips saying astrology ain't real. Makes no sense to me. And then astrology on animals. They even have a detailed study on the astrology of animals where they didn't even take their own description of the animals. They had the owner of the animals write down a description of the behavior, not knowing astrology related to the animal at least, writing down a description of the behavior of the animal, an astrologer looking at the chart of the animal, the same horoscope that you would use for a person, and then looking at the the description of the animal, and they found the same correlations where hard Saturn aspects or hard Saturn contacts made for a more nervous type of dog, and then heavy Sun and Jupiter aspects made for a more extroverted and out there dog.
Yeah,
Within dogs.
What's funny with this is that humans, even knowing they experience this, they're willing to argue against it because they're skeptic. animals, they're not gonna argue against it. It's
There's no
their
argument.
life.
There's no argument, yo. It's real shit. And he even goes into talking about motherfucking the full moon effect and how multiple studies. You've seen the amount of studies that has been done within peer-reviewed journals of the highest institutes discovering this stuff. They found the full moon effect, that more dog bites happen on full moons, more murders happen on the full moons, more robberies happen on the full moons, to the point where police departments who have a budget that they have to allocate put more staff on duty of full moons. And then we even have the term lunacy, lunatics. But that's from the old days, and they're crazy. No, this is modern day. Modern day police officers are allocating staff around full moons. And full moons is talking about your emotional reaction to things, and more irrational emotions happen with on full moons.
I like the deep subconscious. This is why some fucked up things happen in the full moon, yo.
I'm telling you. So it makes sense that. So it makes sense. And then he even goes into talking about our investors' moonstruck lunar phases and stock returns. This is a real study. This is a real study. And a bunch of Asian niggas doing this shit too. Like, oh my God. Talking about the relation to the moon, and then what planets do financial astrologers look at? They look at the moon and Jupiter.
They even speak about that in this Hellenistic astrology book 2,000 years ago. So even the Greeks knew about it too.
So this is what I'm trying to show people. Like, this is intrinsic knowledge that you have to forcefully take from people. And even when they did and set up all of the structures, stuck us in Newtonian physics and ways of thinking, we still, even within their own framework, went and improved astrology. Went and improved astrology.
Because their framework is limited and does not encapsulate reality, like how astrology encapsulates reality. So what happens is astrology encapsulates their worldview, not the other way around. And every time they attempt to prove their worldview be fits within astrology, the verses happen. It's like a troll.
There's always missing pieces. It's never holistic. But when you use astrology to go and look at the aspect, you find even the place that their worldview can fit in within the framework of astrology, but then an expanded type of understanding as well. So we would have proved and dead that. It's over. I don't want to hear none of that shit anymore. You to the people that don't believe in astrology, send them this video. Send your friends this video and go and show them. Even that video, it's called The Scientific Fact of Astrology, by the channel Liquid Perception. If you guys wanted to go and search that out, I might put the link in the description too, so that you can easily go and find that and watch the rest of the video for yourself and see all the studies and shit like that he was talking about. But I want to show y'all this to show you that there's no discrepancy. It's not, you have to stay away from scientific investigation and all of that, or that science disproves and you have to separate yourself from it. We need to adopt a holistic perspective of looking at the world, because this is dividing not only the countries, not only the planet, it's dividing you and your own personality. You not having an understanding Mars, the sexual urge and the urge to move things forward, Jupiter, the urge to grow and expand, to show yourself within the public life, Saturn, the urge to find stability and structure and order within the world, and the moon being the ultimate representation of your reigning need and what you need to feel fulfilled within this life. Because you don't have this astrological structure, you personally are divided. You personally. And this is where every single one of your problems in life comes from. Not one comes steps outside of the reins of your personality not being fully integrated. Not one. Not one. So astrology. So now that we know that astrology is 100% proven fact, how can we use this to within our lives? What are the best ways to utilize astrology? Well, with astrology, and then this is not to discount even Newtonian physics, even though we showed how much theories came out after that that went and disproved it. If you want to build a motherfucking bike, nigga, you better know about the Newtonian physics, my nigga. If you want to go and do all of this other shit, you want to build a plane and build a building and do all of that different type of shit, you're gonna need that type of knowledge. But for you to base your whole experience off of them, you're going to be limited. And then the reason why everybody is lacking, if you look at society now, you tell me a society is perfect based off of these theories. You tell me if it's perfect or holistic and there's a place for everybody and all of that. You tell me.
Yeah, because they're usually just worshiping one attribute or focusing on one attribute more than the other.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So now astrology can help improve the healing arts. Astrology could be to the healing arts what the periodic table is to the elements, where that should always be a reference. If your psychologist doesn't have a chart, your horoscope put up beside it, I don't give a fuck what this nigga's talking about. And then what is he basing his information off of? Statistical, objective information that large-scale studies funded by niggas like Jeffrey Epstein like real shit, yo. Like real shit. And then they're talking about behaviors based off of what, 600 people in the States, in the Midwest, in New York? How does that describe universal man? How does that describe niggas in India with your Sigmund Freud type of ideology, the super id, and then the parental suppression and shit like that? How does that play out in India where they don't give a fuck about none of that shit? We don't even have a choice about how your parents and all of that is, where the whole parental dynamic is different. How does those psychological theories or your studies and objective statistical information that you said, all people that beat their meat need to do this, or all people, when you try and fragment and separate everything like that through this objective way of doing it, trying to accumulate all of these numbers of people to find out how you should treat them, but it takes out your subjective reality. So they're taking all this objective information that they have accumulated from a bunch of people on a specific behavioral set and try to impose it onto you to solve your problems, but not even discounting how you feel, but not even counting in how you feel in your subjective reality about how all of this is going on. Like we can all, like this black people missing their dad type shit. I know it's niggas don't have their dad, but if you go to every nigga who doesn't have a dad, it doesn't play out the same. So it doesn't matter what statistical objective information you go and get. Like I remember meeting it was a light skinned nigga too, and he had a black dad who went and left him, and he was with his white mom. It was kind of funny when he told me that. I was talking to him, and I was telling him how me not growing up with my dad put a heavier emphasis on manhood and what that means and stuff like that. Made me start thinking about that. He's like, yo, I didn't start thinking about that until my 20s and until later on. So even though we had the same experience, not growing up with our fathers, it went different. But now this bitch ass psychologist who's accumulating all this statistical information and all of that wants to go and treat us the same, saying that the absence of father creates this type of psychological dynamic, and then this is what you need to go and do. Oh, go pop these pills, my nigga. Go and pop these pills. It don't work like that. It don't work like that. So astrology can improve psychology. Not saying that psychology doesn't have valuable insights within certain frames of references. It does, but it won't be holistic until you include have a framework to incorporate the objective with the subjective. And then you can have something that describes universal man. You can go and take astrology to India, you can go and take astrology to the US, you can go and take astrology to the UK, and you'll find the same, or you'll find a correspondence within it, and you can help describe people's personality or system of personality that is intrinsic to that individual person. And it's not static.
You should look at astrology as like a self-organization system that if you utilize it, it makes things biosymmetrical to nature. essentially.
Exactly.
And you could self-organize every area of life: family, home, work, exercise, diets, personal issues, all of it.
All of it, and you didn't come up with none of this shit, yo. Like all of this shit. Like one thing that Santa Guru said that was actually fire, was that it was probably like some proverb, some yogi proverb or some shit like that. But he was like to like a yogi talked to a scientist or some shit like that, and the scientists had developed life, or they took dirt and made life out of it and shit like that, and made like a person out of it, and they're like, see, there's no God, I'm God, I made a life. And then the yogi's like, oh yeah, well that's ill what you did, but go find your own dirt. Like real shit, yo. Like real shit. Like you can't help but be receptive to the experience that you have. So when we talk about the reality of there being a creator with a design, this is not something that is disputed. And if you want to dispute it, go and show me how you built the world and the universe. Go and show me that. Go and show me the disembodied mind floating around. Telling niggas, like this is the reality that we are living in. There's a scientist, Robert Oppenheimer, the Manhattan Project, the guy who designed the bomb and all of that shit with Einstein and all of that, killing niggas and all of that. He warned us against molding a science of psychology on a physics that has already been outmoded. So these are the niggas to do the bomb and all of that shit. They was talking about quantum mechanics in 1920. They were talking about quantum and all of that different types of subatomic particles, understanding the superluminal connectedness in 1920s. But us in 2024, let's talk about astrology is not real, how we can't be connected from a distance, and all of that different type of shit, that there's no such thing as energetic connections and stuff like that. And to the people who do believe that, they're on some flunked out version of it, and not understanding the real essence of it. And then they want to go and separate and think that they can't be scientific and all of that. No, we need holism. We need to integrate all of this together. And astrology is the perfect medium to do this. It is the only medium that we know of to date. And then you don't even need astrology in the shape and form that it exists today. Like what we were talking about before. Like you can go and call it something else. It doesn't have to be Libra. You can call it whatever. You can call it Ma'at. It don't change. It don't change what's actually being occurring. Even within the Buddhist tradition and in the Hindu tradition, where they have the 108 earthly desires. 9 times 12. 108. So within their tradition is 108 desires, and that's a psychological system that they use to reach enlightenment. I wonder what that's based off of. Oh, well, they're different. They're not doing astrology, so that means astrology is not real because the Buddhists and the Hinduism don't use astrology. But then they use astrology within that frame of reference too. And then you can see the discrepancy because people are going to be talking about astrology is not real, but I'm a Buddhist. But I'm a Buddhist. Like, y'all retarded.
I'm Buddha's like the something behind him and shit like that too.
Yeah, this fucking something behind the motherfucker. Like real shit. Like, I don't understand what niggas... And then they want to go and talk about the steps to enlightenment, and there's like 10 steps. If you include the sun, the luminary, there's gonna be 10 planets. There's gonna be 10 planets. And then once you reach the last one, that's when you reach nirvana. If you look at all of the steps, they replicate the movement of the planets too. And then it doesn't even have to be that. Like, we could create a religious system based off of One Piece right now. We could create a religious system off of One Piece, which might happen, which I might develop. Worshiping Luffy as Jesus. Luffy is Jesus, right? And Luffy's captain. And then to calculate skill and mental activity, we'll look at Zoro. We'll talk about Zoro, and we'll channel Zoro. We'll put up a whole 3 swords or some shit like that. We want more mental clarity or some shit like that, and watch us still be aligned with the natural forces while the niggas talking about Newtonian physics. Time, I have to go to work at 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. and go and do that. Still not being in line with nature and still not having clarity in life because they are out of sync with the natural rhythms of nature that we are receptive to. It's not a choice.
That's the whole point of learning Like they speak about in the Bible, like seeing the signs, but not only they're not speaking about seeing the signs in the sky, but seeing the sign within your own experience. When people do some Aries things, when people do some Scorpio shit, when people do some Taurus shit, can you see it? The signs.
100%.
And the human body is literally the sign, the symbol itself, the universe walking into existence.
The head Aries, the throat Taurus, the arms and lungs and shit Gemini, and then this even goes into religious understandings and denomination where the 12 disciples, like, come on y'all, like how do we not see this shit when they keep on throwing the same motherfucking numbers at you when they're talking about 12 around the son of God, and they put a sun behind the nigga and you still don't get it. Like, yo, like, even when I tell you, when astrology's talking about Gemini ruling the hands and shit like that, ruling the arms and shit like that, you're trying to be like, oh, where's that all coming from? Even in the picture of the Last Supper, they divide all the disciples into threes, groups of threes, like three niggas, 4 groups of threes, which is the seasons. And then the nigga who went with Gemini, the third nigga coming up, the nigga's like this with his hands up. Like, I'm like, yo, like, how did niggas not know what's going on? And I think the Virgo one's like cussing a nigga over there. I'm like, yo, like how did niggas not pick up this shit, yo? Virgo's cussing a nigga in the picture. And then I think Pisces is not looking at what's going on or trying to escape from it. I'm like, yo, like how can we not have seen it through the image? Clear as day. The pineal gland, don't even get me started on the pineal gland, man, with that being Jesus. And then Jesus and the connections to Jupiter, the chakra that related to Jupiter being your third eye. Jesus talking about let thine eye be single. If you want to see me, meet me in heaven, cast your net on the right side, the right hemisphere of the brain, which allows you to unlock these specific principles. And so if I say Jesus is the pineal gland, you're going to be doing, there's 12 cranial nerves around your motherfucking pineal glands. The motherfucking disciples, nigga. Like this is what I mean. And it's embedded into our bodies. Us denying these things, and we're denying ourselves. No wonder you're fragmented. No wonder you're confused within life. No wonder you're getting frustrated with yourself. Why you don't see growth. Why you don't feel stable within the world. Because you're following some dumbass niggas that is trying to encapsulate you in a non-holistic worldview.
Yeah, aka denominations from all point of view.
100%. 100%. And then you can even look at on the planet and how we can better structure human societies. Look at us here on Earth. I mean, here in America, how because of the sun's path on the ecliptic, where the sun would be hitting, like peaks during different points of the season would be landing on different continents. If you want to go and look at the map of the world, and then you follow the ecliptic and the path that the ecliptic goes on, you'll find that Cancer, the sign of Cancer, even the Tropic of Cancer, is hit in the States, in the West Coast. And then you have Leo in the central of the States, and then Virgo on the East Coast of the States. You telling me niggas ain't just surfing the waves and being chill and relaxing and want to take vacations on the West? You like bruh. And then you telling me niggas in the deserts aren't here worshiping the sun. We don't have the temple of the sun in motherfucking Mexico in the motherfucking desert where the sun's fucking focused on for Leo. And then on the West Coast with Virgo, which is talking about work, routine. Isn't that where we have all the skyscrapers, the most business? And Virginia, like what you were saying, where they brought all the motherfucking slaves to go and serve them, to go and work and build out. Like, yo, what if we understood that shit? And what if we maximized the positive aspects of Virgo on the East Coast? And if you weren't resonant with that Virgo frequency, why the fuck are you on the East Coast? Go surf on the West Coast, or go to fucking India in the Taurus, or go to like this is the type of worldview that. And then what are the positive and negative signs of Virgo? We can use that to help mitigate the society that we build within these specific geographical locations. You can't avoid it anyways. You might as well bring out the best and the positive attributes of these aspects, but you guys keep on wanting to be repressed and separated and divided on a personal level, on a relationship level, on a mental level, on a societal level, and on a planetary level. Like, it doesn't have to be like this, and all it takes is learning of the simple rules of form that astrology has been laid out. Astrology is a psychological system that is thousands of years old that retains to this day. Do you want to go and believe what Sigmund Freud developed within his puny experience over 20 years of studying just 1,000 people in the States? Or do you want to talk about a system that has been building up and developing over thousands of years, that is a continuous body of knowledge that shows, and if we're talking about thousands of years and certain systems still retain, it shows that these things are universal. Instead of all of these other Newtonian mechanics that keep on getting disproven, and then Einstein's theory of relativity that gets disproven. Like, we need better frameworks, y'all. And astrology will do it. And then even look at the elements with fire, earth, water, and air. Fire is plasma. So so you want to talk about the elements? Oh, there's 108 elements, and I just already showed you that's the zodiac that they motherfucking talking about. But you want to talk about there's more than that elements. We're talking about the shapes and form that they take, and all of those elements. What forms do they take? They either take a plasma form, fire. They either take a solid form, earth, or liquid form, water, or a gas form, air. So how is this not sufficient and holistic to explain everything? Everything, yo, everything. And then before colonization, this is what we was on. This is what we was doing. We was building pyramids and temples and shit like that, worshiping this type of stuff. Living, there were cities with no walls, my nigga. No walls. We was just vibing. We was just vibing because we all had this understanding of the processes of nature. I'm telling you, this astrology shit is powerful. And astrology can and will save the earth. The fact that we can't run away from this shit shows that, like, God's just waiting. He's like, do these niggas get it yet? God's just reading a motherfucking manga right now. God's just chilling up there reading a manga. Be like, do these niggas get it? Do they get it yet? Oh, do they get it yet? Oh. Just a disappointed ass parent. I feel bad for God sometimes. Because niggas just be dissing this nigga, but then it's his fault too. So, because he made us like this. And it's like, how bad? But there's a purpose to it. God's plan. God's plan. There's a real plan. And we can't escape the frameworks of this plan. So yeah, in conclusion, astrology is going to provide us meaning and purpose. The statistical objective viewpoint that science has right now. And then look at us now. Science has developed to the point where we created artificial intelligence. But how do you feel in your personal life? Your marriage is failing. Like you don't speak with your mom. You and your mom because like this shit's fucked up.
They're in the point where they're gonna make objective reality basically rule subjective reality. People are gonna outsource their own life to do all those objects, to those AI. Yo, I don't need to do that. I'm gonna let this person do it. Let's do it.
Who am I gonna marry, or how should I deal with my mom? And
AI.
You figure this out.
What should I say for her? Oh, I'm asking AI.
And yo, literally. And one last thing that I want to talk about or show you guys that was in this astrology book that I found that I thought was a very interesting contrast to put up, and wants to talk about the different approaches to knowledge that us and our human experiences can have. And one is more objective and one is more subjective. When you're talking about thinking, logical thinking versus intuition. And what are the differences between these two modalities, and why do we suck the dick of thinking and neglect intuition? The scientific tradition that designs this world does not take into account intuition.
Because we worship masculine energy, not feminine energy. Yeah.
Literally, phallic religions, and they do that all subconsciously.
Yeah.
symbologic wise,
Like
using the same
worshiping,
forces that we talk about.
like when you worship a man idea, like you AKA sucking his dick. And like in some form of dimension and reality. In this dimension reality, you doesn't look like it, but it looks like it.
100%. I remember when we ate, when you maybe eat figs, where you introduce all the man them to figs, really, and it was the fresh fig, not the dry figs.
Yeah.
It was
I knew.
fresh.
I planned that. I knew for you to guys to like it, you guys have to try the fresh one.
Fresh, and then Devil was like, "Yo, this tastes like God's pussy," and I was like, "Yo," I was like, "Yo," there was no truer words have ever been spoken.
Just the fact he came up with that allegory, just look how people compare like female genitalia to like fruits and things like that, and how it goes to like feminine energy.
The fertility has the seeds, can create new life. The
And
carbon
people like
aspect to it.
and people like eat this, it's good for your womb, it develops your baby, and like all type of stories.
That was intuition. God whispered that into his ears, but like, "Yo, this is my pussy you eating right now." And he's like, "Oh," he was like, "Word, word." That was intuition. But yeah, the differences and contrast between thinking and intuition. So, what is the assumption that is being made when we're looking at thinking? The assumption that being made is that things are causal, that things are based off of causality, aka one thing leads to another. The ping pong, the white ball in pool goes and hits another ball, and that hits, and then goes and hits another ball, and then falls into the circle. That things are causal. That's the assumption that's being made with thinking. The assumption that's being made with intuition is not, things aren't necessarily causal, because there's a correspondence within a whole. There's a bigger picture. So one thing that leads to another, just because I smacked your ass because you said something doesn't necessarily mean that. And maybe someone said something to me 12 years ago that even made me insecure in the first place to go smack your ass when you already said that. That's the assumption that's being made with intuition. What is the aim of thinking? The aim of thinking is to discriminate and to classify, to put things into little boxes, to separate things from one another. That is the aim of thinking. So we can separate things into different sections.
It's like having a shape or form as you go through experience. So just don't be disorganized completely, lost in the chaos, the feminine energy coming through you. You have something going on for yourself, an idea,
Structure.
a routine, order. Yeah, order and chaos.
Order and chaos. That's literally what it can be diced down to. Doesn't that what Peterson
Exactly.
talks about too?
Yeah.
Like, see,
Order.
that's what I mean about them type of niggas just ripping astrology. I swear to God.
Yeah, order, masculine, air and earth, and then feminine, fire, water. That's it. And then it breaks out to the 12 zodiac signs, different form of order, different form of chaos.
The 12 principles of life. You see, this even Jordan Peterson, who would say that astrology ain't necessarily real, can't escape those when you're honestly looking at the human psyche and psychology. Even look at psyche, and the root of that word comes from the Greek word psyche, the Greek word psyche, it means soul. How are you going to separate the soul in the psychology, the study of the soul? That's what it is. But you want to talk about the psychology of the mind. But back then, the Greeks understood that the soul was the mind, that they were intrinsically connected. But somehow that got lost. Philosophy, the love of wisdom. They didn't want to go and separate everything like that shit, like what we're doing now. They were holistic. So what's the aim of intuition? Synthesis and order. Intuition shows you how everything is kind of connected, that God type thing. You feel that there's a purpose to things, that this thing didn't just happen, that these things are kind of connected within a grander whole. What is the nature of resulting concepts? With thinking, it's static. The resulting concepts of thinking, static, forever changing. When you're thinking, you're trying to come up with a concept that wouldn't change so that you can go back to it and use it as a tool, which makes sense. It can be utilized in certain aspects. But the nature of resulting concepts with intuition is process and orderly change. You know things that are going to continue moving. Even you understand there's a whole and that things can come from different aspects. You're prepping and preparing yourself for change, for things to flow within a grand order, that you want to be able to predict things. That's the nature of the resulting concepts. What's the ways of proceeding with thinking? systematic. You know, you trying to create a little structure of
Mhm.
how things can go to create order. The way of proceeding with intuition is all at once. It's all at onceness. When it's intuition, when you intuitively get information, it comes like that. A whole concept. You know, niggas would be trying to think of a novel or you know a book idea. Boom. Oh, I know the whole story right now. If you want to go and look at the greatest
Yeah.
creative people, the
But
creative people do that.
it comes all at once though. It doesn't come in a very interpretative way. Even if you ask them at that moment, like, what is it? They may not be put it in definite key term, definite order, details.
They'll be like, I don't even know.
I
Beethoven
just feel it.
exactly. That's what they said. It's like the music will come to me in ordered form already. Like the music will come to me finished. And that's what they say. And I understand that. And if you're creative, you get that. When you're doing an
You
art piece, you know that's what happens.
you see it in like even daily life when you are at work. You see people humming, and then it's like they're putting something together. It's like they're writing something.
100%. And then what's the language of thinking? The language of thinking is quantitative, mathematics or precise words, which can devise an objective way of looking at the world. But the language of intuition is qualitative, the quality of things, the feeling, the visual, the artistic, the sensory experience of something, the how it feels on a personal level. Mathematics ain't gonna tell you how licorice tastes. Ain't gonna teach you how pussy tastes. It's only through the sensory experience of those things, and that knowledge isn't based off of thinking. It's on intuition. What is the orientation that is being taken with thinking, with that way of accumulating knowledge? It's that there's a problem. There's a problem, and you're trying to think of a way to go and solve it. That's the orientation. There's something that you need to deconstruct to figure out. There's an obstacle of having
Oh.
to figure something out, and you have to deconstruct it to go and figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
The orientation of intuition is mystery. That you'll never fully understand everything. It's all unknown. Like, you can never really be too sure of all of that different type of shit. Yeah, the field of study of thinking is contents and details of whole systems. The field of study of intuition is the whole system and the forms and patterns of the whole system itself. The holism.
Bro, like this is why yogis and all these people, they're not about trying to figure it out, while scientists, they were trying to figure it out, and scientists tell yogis, we figured it out. Yogis like, what's the point of trying to figure it out? You're not supposed to figure
100%.
it out. Yeah, you're supposed to go as you go, basically. Yeah.
And that's why yoga doesn't hit the same for Westerners as it does for the Eastern niggas. Niggas in the East hit asanas and have enlightenment. Their fucking marriage problem is solved by back arching. like they don't have no more marriage problems, no more nothing by doing a back arch. And then they'll go and tell you that the transitions between the positions, the asanas, are more important than the specific asanas themselves. Whereas us in the Western tradition, we don't even care about the transitions. We don't even think like that because it's not in the West. That's why whenever I hear niggas saying they're doing yoga, I have to note the disrespect that they're talking about because that's a way of life, my nigga.
Yeah,
If you going
yeah.
out here of the yoga class to go and beat your wife or to go and eat a double cheeseburger and go to work and exploit some person, like that's not the yogic lifestyle. You just stretching, my nigga. That's all you was doing. You wasn't doing no yoga. You wasn't reaching enlightenment. You wasn't doing none of that shit. You was stretching out your muscles. Good for you. Stretch out the muscles, my nigga. You gonna feel looser and better in life. But it's not a lifestyle that you were following. And it bothers me, like when I hear niggas be saying shit like that. When even with the dreads, and then I can't even get too mad with dreads because when I got the dreads, I wasn't privy to this information. But there's spiritual meaning behind dreads. Like your hair is an extension of your nervous system. These are spiritual. I don't even want to call them dreads. Look at me calling them dreads. That's a British word That means dreading. That's a bad thing. These are locks. This is locks right here. This is natural melanated locks. And there's nothing to dread about this shit because this gives you extrasensory perception right here. This is something spiritual.
These are your Wi-Fi cables, yo.
These are my Wi-Fi antennas, my nigga, right now. Fucking rub your face and I know all your feelings and thoughts, my nigga. All of them. But, yeah. And then look at the domain of usefulness for thinking. It's the outer world. It's the material. And it works. Newtonian physics. You can really start to understand and manipulate the external world. But the usefulness of intuition is all internal. It's all internal. Your inner world, your psychic and spiritual experience of the world. Now, even though I may be biased to intuition, but that's because that level of knowledge was deprived my whole life until, you came into some type of knowledge and you dive into it. But I understand there's a synthesis of these two. And the only system that synthesizes these two that mankind knows of today is astrology. Is astrology. So yeah, that's my presentation. If you have any final remarks, my brother Harith.
After this presentation, if you wanna argue any points, any of you Luciferian arguments, any denomination, please present them.
Please, and I wish. And when people talk about astrology being pseudo, and then it's funny. Like Millie's mom doesn't believe in astrology. Whenever she talks about astrology, which is like I don't care, but whenever she talks about astrology, she calls it a pseudoscience. And then she says she doesn't want to talk about it because she's gonna say something that's going to hurt my feelings or some shit like that.
Nah.
And I'm like, yo, if you really believe that what I'm talking about is nonsense and that I'm basing my whole life around these things, and you be, yo, explain this shit to me. If this is real, if you're telling me that this is all nonsense, save me from my delusion and present me to some clarity. If astrology ain't real, I'll set that shit aside right now, this instant. If you can provide me some empirical evidence on how it's not real. Show me all these discrepancies. All of these studies were based off of falsifications and they weren't real. My own personal experiences was based off of some type of delusion in my head, some type of arthritis in the frontal lobe. Go and show me. Go show me the picture of the arthritis in my frontal lobe, and I'll believe you, and I'll put astrology to the side. I'll go back to school. I'll do whatever it takes. You know what I mean? To get along. I'll be a physicist. I'll start making cars and buildings and shit like that. That's what I'll do. I'll drop it right now. But then you have to provide me with the evidence that you can do that. And this is what you're basing your life off of, saying that there's science and scientific evidence. Show it to me. Because I just went and showed y'all that there is scientific evidence of astrology.
Mm-hmm.
Oh goddamn, bro! My phone died, bro. Right at the end, but that's okay. We could close it out anyways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the presentation, y'all. Thanks for watching. Check out our website, truspace.biz. Check out our Instagram, truspace_. And yeah, we have a whole bunch of new shit coming. Y'all stay tuned. Let us know what you thought about the presentation. If you disagree, if you agree, let it down in the comments. Put it down in the comments. If you fuck with what we talking about, leave us a 9. Leave us 3 9s down in the comment section to let us know that you're on that spiritual path and that you resonate with what's being done and what's being said. And thank y'all for tuning in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Catch y'all.